Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 2CTV with your latest updates. The dictatorial and tyrannical regime of Erdogan in Turkey have officially started their military actions against the Kurds. In the name of targeting the Kurdish rebels, they are directly hitting the Kurdish civilians in Iraq and Syria. This is following the terrorist attack that happened in Turkey yesterday. This was simply an excuse that was always going to be used by Erdogan. We're going to talk about all the details that we know so far and get your reaction live as well. 2CTV will remain the home of geopolitical news from all around the world. The terrorist sponsor state, Turkey, is now becoming directly a terrorist state. Following the terrorist attack happened in their country, in Turkey, which was obviously disgusting, no group took official responsibility at the time, claimed responsibility. Of course, the Turkish government blamed it on the Kurdish rebels. Now, the Kurds have been fighting for their freedom and for their liberation for a very long time, and obviously they've been targeted by the Turks for some time now. And amongst the civilians and everybody else, they also do have rebels, and of course that also includes sometimes the very militancy groups that do terrorist activities as well. All this mess has been going on for a long time. We already know that. But the response from the Turkish government has been absolutely disgusting. There is not much interest in the mainstream media. There are no protests being organized by the left in the West. Following the terrorist attack in Turkey that hit the aerospace industry's headquarters in Turkey, in Ankara, we had the Turkish government already instantly going authoritarian inside their country. Now that's the fascinating part, because the Turkish regime, just like the Islamic Republic of Iran, the two troublemakers in the region, they have the same tactics. So first thing they do, guess what? Yes, they shut down the internet and the social media sites. So we can see the list of all the major platforms and websites, from YouTube, X, Facebook, everything else, Telegram, Instagram, TikTok. Everything went down in order to do a massive crackdown internally and externally. But the Turkish government didn't really stop there, because they knew they have to respond in a harsh way. Didn't necessarily mean that they have to hit the civilians, did it? Mari reported that Turkey strikes PKK targets in Iraq and Syria. Turkey's defense ministry confirmed the airstrikes that destroyed 32 targets linked to the Kurdish Workers' Party, or PKK, a militant group labeled as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US and the EU. And obviously the terrorist attack in Ankara killed 5 people. We already know that. The issue with this is that the official statement from the Turkish government was, we are simply going to be hitting, well, after they did it, they said we simply hit the terrorist targets, the terrorist sites. That wasn't really the case, because they hit all the civilian areas, and unlike the Israeli defense forces, they didn't actually give any heads up. There was no notice in advance to get the civilians to leave, because they don't care. It's only the IDF in the region that truly care. They say, well, the right thing to do is to let the civilians know that we are coming so that they could evacuate. That's not what the Turkish do. And they decided to hit everybody, not just the actual rebels, the Kurdish rebels. So we have some videos that we can show you guys, and of course we will also get your reaction. Let's go to the first clip. Now that's the interesting part, because Erdogan has been going around claiming that Benjamin Netanyahu is Hitler, and saying that what Israel is doing in the region, in Gaza, for example, and Lebanon, is genocide, which is not really the case anyway. But Turkey themselves, Erdogan is actually doing what he's claiming Netanyahu is doing. He's hitting civilians without any notice. And this is the whole problem. There's no outrage. It's completely crazy. Now, we do have some supporters of Erdogan in the live chat, I can already see. It's going to be a very, very lively live chat, ladies and gentlemen. The Kurds have been destroyed for a long time. Obviously, over time, they've also created their own rebel groups and terrorists. Yes, and terrorism is wrong. We already know that. Nobody supports, no sane person supports the terrorists. So we simply saying that the innocent women and children and everybody else who are civilians, who've been simply fighting for their life, saying, can we please live? No, you can't, according to the Turks and some others as well, because they continue to get targeted on a regular basis. The Turkish occupation army is currently shelling the downtown of Kobani city and the city of Tal Rifat north of Aleppo. This shelling has resulted in the martyrdom of 2 civilians, as they said is the report, and injuries of 6 others. Additionally, the western countryside of Tal Abyad is subjecting to another round of brutal Turkish shelling. We do also have a video from this one. This is slightly graphic, ladies and gentlemen, just a heads up. There is, I think, a child that has been taken to the hospital. We're not really sure if the child is alive or not, because the injuries was severe. Let's go.
Yo, I
Crazy stuff, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, there doesn't seem to be any outrage. The attempt to genocide the Kurds have been going on for a long time, despite the fact that the Americans tried their best to control the Turks, saying, okay, you can't really just go around wiping out civilians, just like directly. There's also a point about proportion, because when Israel decided to hit back in Gaza, primarily because the hostages were taken and they were sent to Gaza. And they said, well, we're going to have to start what Israel started to do was a counter-terrorism operation. They call it a war, but it's a counter-terrorism operation. So they went in, they always gave notice to civilians if they wanted to hit somewhere, and they went very slowly, took them about a year. It's still technically ongoing. But what Turkey did at the time, they said, we need a proportionate response from Israel. Proportionate. Oh, this is not proportionate, as if in war we have proportionate, right? But they themselves, obviously, the terrorist attack in Turkey was disgusting. We know that. They decided to hit civilians without even letting them know in advance. That is the difference. Now, as we said, there doesn't seem to be any outrage across the Western world. This is the fascinating part. No left-wing group, socialist group, or any sort of group in the West have organized any protests. They don't seem to care about the Kurds losing their lives. Because, as we say, no Jews, no news. If Israel is not involved, nobody cares. Nobody cared about the Nigerian Christians when they get killed regularly. Nobody cares about Armenians and the Christians in Armenia. Nobody cares about the Kurds. Nobody cares about the Iranian civilians getting destroyed by the Islamic occupiers of Iran. But when Israel defends itself, everybody suddenly cares. Scenes from the barbaric Turkish bombing that targeted the city of Tal Rifat, north of Aleppo, which was crowded with civilians and obviously led to the death of 3 civilians, injured 6 others. That was the initial report. The number of casualties have now increased. We can also show you a clip from that moment. Let's This fight against the Kurds has been going on for a very, very long time. Continues. They usually tends to be a pause when the Western side tries to tell the Turkish regime to calm down a little bit, because it's just very bad PR considering Turkey is in NATO. Now, there's been a lot of other discussions about how this would actually play out. Let's look at the actual details. Renewed Turkish airstrikes on Ramishlu. One of these airstrikes targeted the Alaya prison building. A bakery in Kobane has been destroyed by an airstrike by the Turkish military. Airstrike on Qahtaniya reported the airstrikes hit a petrol station. Another airstrikes in the region on the oil field. Another one on the Melalan region, and that was reported, where the Turkish military is destroying oil rigs and other infrastructure. Also airstrikes on the oil fields at the border with Iraq in the Derek region, and airstrikes on the oil fields near Tibes, PA. I mean, one of the main things that we had was they, as I said, they repeated that the position from the Turkish government is, we simply hit the terrorist sites. I mean, but that's not really the case. On the list, you have everything else. You didn't read. This was not a targeted attack. You guys were the ones who kept calling Netanyahu Hitler and saying that his response is not proportionate. But what is Erdogan doing? And again, are we going to get any sort of a UN Security Council about this? Are we going to have any emergency meeting at the United Nations? Are we going to actually have any result? What about the ICC? What about The Hague? Are we going to have any international court case against the Turks? I'm going to say no. Not going to happen. Nobody cares. This is what we have. So let's get some reaction from you lovely people. First, let's go to Super Chats. Carl says, so it's okay for Turkey to defend itself, but not Israel. That is not really, that's not what's happening. Double standards, if you ask me. So Carl doesn't actually know the history of this, or even what's been going on the last 24 hours. The genocide of the Kurds has been going on for a very, very long time. When terrorists attack you, you have to hit back at the terrorists. That's the rule of the game. You don't really go around targeting civilians without giving any heads up. The difference is the Israeli Defense Forces do targeted attacks, and they tell the civilians to evacuate. And if they don't, if Hamas, for example, force them to stay, then there will be collateral damage. That is the difference. Turkey is not defending itself because there is no attack on Turkey. The Kurdish rebels didn't even take responsibility. And of course, 99.9% it was the Kurdish terrorists. We know that. But the Turks decided to start it without any sort of conclusion. That is the difference. Nobody's declared war on Turkey, unlike the Islamists on Israel. Nina said, hi, my lovely. No surprise to me, the man is a dictator. Yes, but there are a lot of idiots in the West who support the Islamic dictator Erdogan. That is the difference. It's completely fascinating how many people in the West continue to fall for the lies of Erdogan and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Tony says, this planet we live on provides everything we need as humans to live comfortably, yet look at all whatever is going on. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I agree. It's insanity, the way humans treat each other. And he says, how does Erdogan stay in NATO? How does that work? It's crazy. I don't understand. How long will it take? Is it the progress that Turkey will make in BRICS that will result in this? Because a lot of people are saying that the NATO side would like to keep Turkey in NATO, keep them close, especially because they've joined BRICS, so that they could basically keep an eye on them. But that's a terrible strategy, because that's not really going to happen anyway. Let's get some more reaction from some non-super chats. We got some supporters of the Kurds saying free Kurdistan, and Lion King says I stand with the Kurds. HH says the Turks are so evil, well, at least the regime. There are some good people in Turkey, good Christians. They will get their punishment soon enough. Julie says, let's see what Starmer and Khan and the loony protesters have to say. God bless Israel. Not much. They don't really care. We have someone who hates the Jews in the live chat saying, hey, you effing Zionists. F Watch your mouth. That is not English. That is terrible grammar and spelling. Thanks for that. Thanks for the feedback. And Rick says they've been fighting the Kurds for centuries. It's not new. It's like saying that the Islamic side have been fighting the Jews since the 7th century, so it's not new, so we shouldn't care. Just because they've been going since the 7th century, the Islamic side against the Jews, doesn't mean we should just say, it's nothing new, everything's fine. No. Defend yourself. If you believe in life and freedom, defend yourself. It applies to both the Jews and the Kurds and the Iranians. And anybody really who cares about life and freedom. Turkey has been trying to join the EU for years. They're still under candidate status. This is just another justifiable reason why they were rejected. They're never going to be able to join the EU unless the EU completely changed the rules. Jordan says, aren't the Kurds communists? So the Kurdish rebels do have the affiliation with the communist groups, but not all of them, obviously. But yes, the Kurds the major rebel groups are socialist leaning, but because it's a very stupid thing that they have. They associate. They see it the way the Russians saw just before the Russian Revolution. They saw the concept of socialism as some sort of a revolutionary liberation, which is completely stupid. Nobody really cares about that. So, but not all the Kurds are communists. No, it's like saying one group of people. For example, you meet one, I don't know, Indian, and that Indian likes KFC, and say, so all Indians like KFC. That only applies to some groups. So Jews, Kurds, and a couple of other groups, if you see one Kurd or one Jew saying something or doing something, the whole world would say, so the Jews do this, the Kurds do this. No, it doesn't really mean that every single Jew, every single Kurd agree with each other. Let's see what else we have from you guys in the live chat. We've got some super chats again. Ivan says that NATO are as corrupt as the UN. And we have another one saying Turkey funding Hamas and ISIS terrorists, Erdogan. Yeah, the thing about Erdogan's regime is that they've been funding various groups. And these are the groups who actually oppose each other, by the way. Because at times it helped Erdogan to essentially trigger and provoke the Iranian regime, because they are frenemies at this point. The Islamic Republic of Iran and Turkey are frenemies. They have a weird relationship. Depending on what it is, they will be enemies, and depending on what the issue is, they will be allies. And in this situation, obviously, Turkey backing Hamas and Hezbollah has been quite clear. We have one of the few remaining leaders of Hamas living in Turkey. Yet another reminder that Turkey is still in NATO, by the way. They get away with much. Shira says, Kurds need to brand Erdogan as a Zionist. Genius idea. I love it will give them all the useless knobs in the West, which isn't actually helpful, but does make a lot of noise. That is so true. There are a lot of people in the West who don't actually know. They don't even know who Erdogan is, for example. They don't actually know which group is which. And what you have is, as Shira Amir from Israel says, if you label Erdogan as a Zionist, that's genius PR. Obviously, eventually it's going to get exposed, but at least we might end up getting one protest out of it in the West. Eric is right. Turkey has no business in NATO, not since Erdogan. This is literally the enemy of the West. It's like having Bin Laden as part of NATO. It makes no sense. What is the point of NATO if you have Erdogan in it? That's a good reminder. Turkey is Asian. 1% pretends to be in Europe. It's like this much of Turkey is in Europe. They're like, yeah, we're European. Whoever let them play in European football and Eurovision was seriously misguided. They are stuck in the 19th century. I would say 18th century, but yeah. That was a tactical move, obviously, to get the Turkish side to become slightly more European. Long term, it didn't really work because the last couple of generations, they decided to go backwards. All that progress they made until the 1990s went back, which is really a shame. Turkey had a great future. Still has a great future. They just need to sort out their mess. Steven says Turkey is starting to get on my tits now. With all the others. Yeah. it's also, let's not forget about the business of war. There is a lot of money in it, and they're going to be taking advantage of all this. That is also a good reminder that Ataturk would be rolling in his grave if he knew what was happening in his country. The cheeks on the Turkish regime is you go to Turkey now, they still have posters, statues and paintings of Ataturk. Right? Really? Still? You hate the guy. He stood for everything that you stand, that were stand against everything you stand for, and they're still going around pretending, because they know there's still a big chunk of Turkish people who still very much like Ataturk. And now things are slowly changing. The education system in Turkey is changing. It's becoming more Islamic. The whole society is becoming Islamic. The Christians are eventually going to be pushed out anyway. It's not a good situation. Luke says, I have met and got to know a few Kurds in my life. Nice people in my experience. Yeah, the Kurds tend to be very mellow, apart from the PKK terrorists, obviously. Every tribe has terrorists, by the way, let's not forget. But normal Kurdish people, in fact, the Kurdish Iranians, because obviously you got the Iraqi Kurds, the Iranian Kurds. The Iranian Kurds, as a tribe, as an ethnicity, are known in Iran as the nice ones. You know, they're nice, naive, just friendly, and easygoing. But the genocide against them continues, obviously. This would definitely, in terms of PR, give massive ammunition to Netanyahu's regime, because they're going to go around saying, well, Erdogan can't really make any statements about Israel defending itself anymore, considering what they're doing to children in Iraq and Syria. Fat Cat says Tom Robinson sentenced to a month sitting in a bath of beans. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. We're going to come back with more updates on Maya Tusi, and we are the media.